Lisa Chen checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes, her heart racing as she walked through the warm, amber-lit cafe with her 4-year-old son Tommy's small hand clasped tightly in hers. At 29, Lisa had been out of the dating world for so long that this blind date felt like stepping into an entirely foreign country. Tommy skipped beside her, clutching a small box of crayons and a few sheets of paper that Lisa always carried for moments when she needed him to stay quietly occupied. His brown hair was neatly combed, and he wore his favorite overalls over a clean white t-shirt, looking like the picture-perfect little boy he was. "Mommy, is this where we're meeting your friend?" Tommy asked, his voice carrying the innocent curiosity that made Lisa's heart ache with love and worry in equal measure. "Yes, sweetheart," Lisa replied softly. "Remember what we talked about? You need to be very good while Mommy talks to Mr. Alexander." Lisa's friend Sarah had arranged this meeting with her colleague, insisting that Alexander Morrison was perfect for Lisa, successful, kind, and understanding. What Sarah hadn't mentioned was that Lisa would be bringing Tommy along because her usual babysitter had canceled at the last minute, leaving Lisa with the choice between missing the date entirely or bringing her son. She had chosen to bring Tommy, but now, seeing the elegant cafe with its sophisticated atmosphere and well-dressed patrons, Lisa wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. This was clearly the kind of place where business deals were made and important conversations happened, not where single mothers brought their preschoolers on blind dates. Alexander Morrison sat at a corner table, checking emails on his phone while nursing a cup of coffee. At 34, he was the CEO of Morrison Technologies, a software company that had grown from a startup in his garage to a major player in the industry. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit impeccable, and his entire presence spoke of someone accustomed to boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations. When Lisa approached the table with Tommy in tow, Alexander looked up and immediately stood, extending his hand with a professional smile that faltered slightly when he noticed the child. "You must be Lisa," he said warmly, though his eyes kept drifting to Tommy with obvious confusion. "Yes, and I'm so sorry," Lisa began, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "I know this isn't what you expected. My babysitter canceled at the last minute, and I should have called to reschedule. But I didn't want to cancel on such short notice, and I thought maybe if he was really good and quiet, it might be okay. But I can see this was a mistake, and we should probably just go." The words tumbled out in a rush of nervous anxiety, and Lisa was already reaching for Tommy's hand to leave when Alexander raised his own hand in a gentle gesture. "Please," he said, his smile becoming more genuine. "Don't apologize, and definitely don't leave. I'd like to meet this young man." Alexander crouched down to Tommy's eye level, a movement that surprised Lisa with its natural ease. "Hi there, I'm Alexander. What's your name?" "I'm Tommy," the boy replied with the fearless friendliness of childhood. "I'm 4 years old and I can draw really good pictures." "Wanna see?" Before Alexander could respond, Tommy had settled himself into one of the empty chairs and was already pulling out his crayons and paper, spreading them across the table with the unconscious confidence of a child who had never learned to doubt his welcome anywhere. "Tommy," Lisa said quietly, "remember what we talked about. You need to ask before you take up space at the table." "It's perfectly fine," Alexander assured her, settling back into his own chair. "Actually, I'm quite curious to see these really good pictures." As Lisa sat down, still feeling mortified by the situation, she watched Alexander's face for signs of annoyance or impatience. Instead, she saw something unexpected, genuine interest as Tommy began to draw with intense concentration. "What are you drawing?" Alexander asked, leaning forward slightly to get a better view. "It's a picture of my mommy at work," Tommy replied without looking up from his paper. "She fixes computers and makes them happy again." Alexander glanced at Lisa with renewed interest. "You work in technology?" "It's support for a small medical practice," Lisa explained, still feeling self-conscious. "It's not very glamorous, but I enjoy solving problems and helping people." "That's actually quite impressive," Alexander said, and Lisa could tell he meant it. Good IT support is harder to find than people realize. It requires patience, problem-solving skills, and the ability to translate technical concepts for non-technical users. Lisa felt some of her tension ease at his genuine appreciation for her work. It can be challenging, especially when people are frustrated and just want their computers to work properly. I imagine dealing with stressed doctors and nurses requires a special kind of patience. Alexander observed. They save lives, Lisa said simply. If I can make their day a little easier by fixing their technology problems, that feels pretty meaningful to me. Tommy had been listening to this conversation while continuing to draw, and now he held up his finished picture with obvious pride. Look! I drew Mommy fixing the broken computer and making it smile. The drawing showed a stick figure with long hair standing next to a rectangular shape with a distinctly happy face, complete with a big smile and what appeared to be hearts floating around it. Despite its childlike simplicity, there was something deeply touching about the image of his mother as a healer of electronic ailments. That's wonderful. Tommy, Alexander said, accepting the drawing and studying it with the seriousness it deserved. Your mom does very important work, doesn't she? She's the best computer fixer in the whole world, Tommy declared with absolute certainty. When people's computers are sad, Mommy makes them happy again. Alexander looked at Lisa over Tommy's head, and she saw something in his expression that made her heart skip. It wasn't pity or politeness, but genuine admiration for the way she had raised her son to see her work as something meaningful and important. Tommy, can I tell you a secret? Alexander asked, leaning in conspiratorially. Tommy nodded eagerly. I work with computers too, and I know that your mommy's job is actually one of the most important jobs in the whole company. Without people like her, none of the other work would be possible. Really? Tommy asked, his eyes wide with excitement. Really? Alexander confirmed. In fact, I bet your mommy could teach me some things about fixing computers. Lisa felt tears prick her eyes at Alexander's kindness to her son. Most people, especially successful businessmen, would have been annoyed or impatient with a 4-year-old interrupting their conversation. Instead, Alexander was treating Tommy like an important person whose opinions mattered. Can I draw you a picture too? Tommy asked Alexander. I would be honored to have one of your pictures, Alexander replied seriously. As Tommy began work on his second masterpiece, Alexander turned his attention back to Lisa. Tell me about yourself. Sarah mentioned you're incredibly smart and hardworking, but I'd like to hear your story. Lisa hesitated, unsure how much to share. It's not very exciting. I got pregnant young. Tommy's father decided he wasn't ready for that responsibility, and I've been figuring it out on my own ever since. That sounds like the opposite of not exciting, Alexander said gently. That sounds like someone who faced a major life challenge and chose to step up and create a stable life for her child. That's actually quite remarkable. Most people don't see it that way, Lisa admitted. Single motherhood tends to make you invisible in certain social circles. Then those social circles are missing out on knowing some pretty extraordinary people, Alexander replied. Tommy looked up from his drawing. Mommy, are you going to marry Mr. Alexander? Lisa's face went bright red. Tommy! That's not something you ask people. But Alexander was laughing, a warm, genuine sound that filled the space between them. That's probably the most direct question I've been asked in months. I appreciate the honesty, Tommy. Tommy doesn't really understand the concept of dating, Lisa explained. Still mortified. Actually, he might understand it better than we do, Alexander said thoughtfully. Children tend to cut straight through to the important questions. They don't waste time on small talk or pretense. Tommy finished his second drawing and presented it to Alexander with a flourish. This one showed 3 stick figures standing together under a rainbow, with hearts floating all around them. That's you and Mommy and me, Tommy explained matter-of-factly. We're all happy together. Alexander studied the drawing with the same careful attention he had given the first one. This is beautiful, Tommy. Can I keep this? You can keep both of them, Tommy said generously. I can make more pictures any time. As the afternoon continued, Lisa found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Alexander asked thoughtful questions about her work, her goals and her experiences as a single mother. Listening to her answers with genuine interest rather than polite attention, more surprisingly, He seemed to genuinely enjoy Tommy's company, asking about his favorite books, his preschool activities, and his drawings with the kind of attention that made Tommy light up with excitement. "You're really good with him," Lisa observed during a moment when Tommy was focused on creating yet another artistic masterpiece. "He's a great kid," Alexander replied. "Bright, creative, and obviously loved. You're doing an amazing job with him." "It doesn't always feel that way," Lisa admitted. "Some days I worry that he's missing out by not having a father figure, or that I'm not giving him enough opportunities because I can't afford things like other parents can." Alexander was quiet for a moment, watching Tommy carefully color within the lines of his latest creation. "Can I tell you something my own mother told me when I was starting my company?" Lisa nodded. She said that children don't need perfect circumstances to thrive. They need to feel loved, valued, and secure. Everything else is just details. He paused, looking at Lisa directly. "Tommy clearly has all of those things. The rest will work itself out." When Tommy finished his third drawing, he climbed down from his chair and walked over to Alexander, tugging gently on his sleeve. "Mr. Alexander, do you want to be my daddy?" he asked with the devastating directness that only children possess. Lisa felt her world stop spinning. "Tommy, sweetheart, that's not how it works. You can't just ask someone to be your daddy." But Alexander knelt down to Tommy's level again, taking the question seriously. "Tommy, being someone's daddy is a very important job. It means being there when you're happy and when you're sad, helping you learn new things, and making sure you always feel loved and safe." Tommy nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of what Alexander was saying. "Right now, your mommy does all of those things for you, which means she's doing the job of two parents. That makes her pretty special, don't you think?" "She's the best mommy in the whole world," Tommy agreed. "I think so too," Alexander said, glancing up at Lisa with an expression that made her breath catch. "And if I were ever lucky enough to be part of your family, I would want to make sure I was worthy of such an important job." 3 months later, Lisa stood in the same cafe, watching Alexander help Tommy with a more complex drawing that involved multiple colors and careful planning. The three of them had become regulars here, meeting every Sunday afternoon for what Tommy called their family art time. Alexander had proven to be everything Sarah had promised and more. He was patient with Tommy's endless questions, supportive of Lisa's career goals, and had even helped her negotiate a better position at a larger technology company that offered more flexibility for single parents. "You know," Lisa said, as Alexander praised Tommy's latest masterpiece, "I never properly thanked you for that first day." "Thanked me for what?" Alexander asked, genuinely puzzled. "For not running away when you realized I came with a 4-year-old attached. For treating us like we were worth your time instead of like we were an inconvenience." Alexander reached across the table and took her hand gently. "Lisa, you and Tommy weren't an inconvenience. You were exactly what I didn't know I was looking for." Tommy looked up from his drawing, a new one that showed their Sunday afternoon ritual in vivid crayon detail. "Are you going to keep this picture forever, Mr. Alexander?" "Forever and always," Alexander promised. "Just like I'm going to keep taking care of you and your mommy forever and always, even when I'm big like you." "Especially when you're big like me," Alexander said seriously. "Because that's what daddies do." Lisa felt tears of joy fill her eyes as she realized that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that choose each other, drawn together not by biology or circumstance, but by love, patience, and the willingness to see past first. Impressions to the extraordinary, potential that lies beneath, and it all started with a 4-year-old boy who knew how to ask the right questions and draw pictures that showed the world not as it was, but as it could be. If this story warmed your heart and reminded you that love often comes in unexpected packages, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to believe that their perfect family might be waiting in the most unlikely places. Subscribe for more stories about chosen families and second chances, and let us know in the comments about a time when a child's honesty changed your perspective on what really matters. Sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from the smallest voices.